Robert Jeffress, an evangelical advisor to Donald Trump, chimed in on the North Korea debate and essentially told Trump that God has given you the ability, the blessing to take Kim Jong Un out by any means necessary. So let me give you his statement. He says, when it comes to how we should deal with evildoers, the Bible in the book of Romans is very clear. God has endowed rulers full power to use whatever means necessary, including war, to stop evil. In the case of North Korea, God has given Trump authority to take out Kim Jong Un. Now, keep in mind that the passage that he's talking about is Romans 13. The passage says that government authorities have been installed by God, and a ruler is the servant of God to execute wrath on the wrongdoer. In Jeffrey's interpretation, that gives leaders freedom to do whatever, whether it's assassination, capital punishment, or evil punishment, to quell the actions of evildoers like Kim Jong Un. And here is one more tweet that he put out there. When the president of the United States draws a red line, he will not erase, move, or back away from it. Thank God for a president who is serious about protecting our country. The reason why I think that tweet is relevant is because it makes it clear that he is responding to Donald Trump's threats of nuclear action. His original statement didn't mention nuclear action, but that tweet is in response to it. So it seems that he's very supportive.
Yeah, so let's go into all the different ways that he has bastardized the text to his, if you believe in evil purposes. So first of all, Romans 12, the one right above Romans 13, says that you shall not repay evil with evil. Okay, so there goes that. Furthermore, Jesus said that you should turn the other cheek. Well, what happened to turning the other cheek? Now, look, do I think we should turn the other cheek if another country attacks us? No, but I'm not a Christian, nor do I think we should be ruled by the Bible. I think we should be ruled by the Constitution. But if you are a Christian and this guy pretends to be a pastor or pretends to care about Jesus and the New Testament, etc., well, perhaps he should read it. And they asked him about Sermon on the Mount. And he admits, sometimes people will ask him about the Sermon on the Mount. Have you ever even read it? Do you even know what Jesus said? And he said, quote, do you want the president to embody the Sermon on the Mount? I said, absolutely not. That's his quote.
Insane. I mean, the hypocrisy is amazing. And again, you consider yourself one of the most moral people on the planet, right? Your religion makes you so moral. You're advocating for a use of force that would wipe out hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of innocent people.
Yeah, so let's talk about what a monster Robert Jeffress is. And look, whether you think Christianity is good and hence he is not Christian, or you think Christianity is bad and hence he is a Christian, I'm in neither one of those camps. I think all the religions are 100% untrue. So having a conversation about who's a true Christian or who's a true Muslim is irrelevant. The texts are completely contradictory within themselves. So yes, in the Bible it says eye for an eye. It also says turn the other cheek. So which one is it? Oh, don't believe in the Old Testament unless it's Genesis and all the other parts that I like, including hating gays. But otherwise believe the New Testament, except don't believe the parts I don't like in that one. I mean, it's just total nonsense, okay? But if you claim that you're all about Christianity and God and all that, and you want the guy that you think is the most Christian, and you told all your evangelical voters to vote for him because he's the most Christian guy, and you tell him to ignore the Sermon on the Mount? Oh, for literally, for God's sake. I mean, it doesn't get any less Christian than that, at least. I mean, if the Sermon on the Mount doesn't count, then what have you done to the Bible? You've done the anti-Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, by the way, a founding father and helped to write the Constitution. Obviously, James Madison wrote it. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, but Madison also partly based it on what Jefferson had written in Virginia. So he would tear out huge parts of the Bible, most of the Bible, that he thought was gross and violent and unproductive, and he had the Jefferson Bible, only the good parts. It looks like Jeffress has the exact opposite.
Yeah.
He ripped out all the good parts and he only left the bad parts. And so in a nuclear war, and when you drop a nuke, and if you've never seen the pictures from Hiroshima or Nagasaki, it burns everyone alive. So you see, and that's in the core, 100,000 people incinerated immediately. On the outer edges, it burns people, but they don't die. and then they get the radiation, and then the radiation's in the water, and it's poison that kills them slowly. And it is the most grotesque thing humans have ever done to one another. Unfortunately, there is a long list of grotesque things we've done to each other, but it is certainly near the top. And here's Jeffress going, burning babies alive, that's what Jesus would want. Wow, if you think that's what Jesus wants, then your view of Christianity is way worse than my view of Christianity, and I don't believe it at all. So these people are monsters, they really are.
And look, the reality is, going back to your statement about how he takes the worst parts of the Bible and he, celebrates those parts as opposed to the good parts. I mean, it's true of a lot of people. Now, I think the vast majority of religious people look at their religious doctrine and they take the good parts out of it, right? But there are people who cherry pick and they use that doctrine as an excuse to hate, to advocate for violence, to discriminate against people. And so it doesn't surprise me. It's just that whenever we have these conversations, it's usually about people from one specific religion as opposed to, evangelicals.
Yeah, so now two more things here. I don't want you guys to get the wrong idea that all Christians agree with him, not remotely.
Right.
There are a lot of Christians who've come out. There's a Catholic priest who wrote a great article in the Dallas News.
Joshua Whitfield is his name.
Yeah, and he's a Catholic religious leader, and he just laid into Jeffress and said he totally misunderstands the Bible, and he gave a bunch of Bible quotes, etc. Wonderful job by him. And Catholics generally oppose war, let alone nuclear war. The Pope has fought against war over and over again, including the Iraq war in earlier days. This Pope, and it's not just this Pope who is more liberal. No, even conservative popes were against the Iraq war, were against all those wars. And even on Twitter today, tons of conservative Christians, Republicans, saying that Jeffress does not represent Christianity. So I want to give you the full context. But if you're in Jeffress's camp, and that's the kind of evangelical Christianity that you believe in, well, one, you're an enormous hypocrite. So you're supporting Donald Trump, who was married 3 different times. What happened to your family values? Who notoriously cheated on almost all of his wives, I believe every single one according to charges by others, right? Let alone what's in the divorce papers about what he did to his wives, let alone what he has bragged about doing to women who gave no consent. And all the time you said you cared about morality and family values, you were 100% lying. It was political cover for things that you actually wanted to do, things grotesque like this, more war, nuclear war, etc. And then finally, guys, are you kidding me? So Jeffress's main point is, that's okay, the government is awesome. The government persecuted against Christians. It's all over the Bible. We should watch out for the government. And if you're a conservative, aren't you supposed to say small government? And so the Christians would be, thrown to the lions by the government. And so St. Paul warned about the government. They all did, and they said it is. You want to read a quote about it?
I do.
Go ahead.
Let's go to graphic 17, and this is written by Catholic pastor Joshua Whitfield that we referenced earlier. He says, for Paul, it would have been unthinkable to consider a political ruler some sort of anointed Christian prince or president waging war on behalf of believers. He saw political authority as something ordered by God rather than ordained by him.
And he talks about how Paul thought that government was demonic. Now, look, I don't agree with that either, and we should be ruled by the Constitution, not the Bible.
Yes.
But in terms of if you actually care about what the Bible says and what the core of it is, Jeffress takes the one small part of the Bible where it's like, oh, I guess let government do whatever it wants, and and there's of course let's give Caesar what is his, etc. Basically, because the Christians were nonstop getting slaughtered by the governments of the time, which were pagan. It was basically saying, don't mess with the government, otherwise it'll kill you.
Right. Exactly.
And so one last point that apparently the so-called Pastor Jeffress never thought of. You know who was killed by the government? Jesus Christ. So the local political leader in the area murdered Jesus. And now Jeffress's idea is that's okay. The government can do things that appear to be terribly evil because it's responding to evil. And God ordained it to commit heinous acts. And that's what Christianity stands for. If you're in his camp, man, you're monstrous and you're deeply immoral. And if that's your vision of Christianity, you have done more to malign Christianity than any non-Christian ever could. Help us build independent media together. Come join us, tytnetwork.com/join.